podcast and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Okay, Chris is officially off the hook. We have the siren sound in the background. Chris, hello and welcome to this month in GSA Startup, November 2022. How you doing, man?
Hey from New York. I'm doing well. All good.
All good? That is awesome. Chris, can you believe it? At the date of this publication, first, all Americans out there, happy Thanksgiving. And secondly, only 37 days left in this year to make a dent in the universe.
Yeah, still time to turn things around.
Guys, welcome to this month in German, Swiss, and Austrian GSA Startups, our startup news wrap-up for November 2022 by Startup Radio with Chris, as you know, from New York, and me, Joe, from Frankfurt. We recorded this news episode on Wednesday, November 16th, 2022. The recording date is due to our schedule. As always, all news not yet included here will be published in our next news episode, which will be published in our last news this year. Expect it to be December 22nd, 2022. Our highlights. Chris, you are a guy of highlights, right? Aren't you?
Yeah, it's been a busy couple of weeks. I mean, especially for internet companies, the ones leading the world with all the shenanigans going on at Twitter or the thousands of people that had been laid off at Facebook, but also with regards to German startup news and companies that have links to Germany, Switzerland, or Austria. We've seen a lot, and we will cover a lot of this ground in our episode today. For example, even though FTX may be history, we see that a German blog reports that there are several parties interested in buying the European entity of FTX. FTX also triggered Bitpanda to order a special audit from KPMG. We have some more job cuts. It's this time the second round. We have news about Gorillas, which may sell itself at $1 billion, even though they have raised $1.3 billion capital and venture capital already. Airtaxis are still hot. Volocopter raises more than $180 million to get closer to a certification. Lilium sells 100 Airtaxis to Saudi Arabia. We see that the German VC market is stabilizing, according to Creditshelf for Wiederaufbau Research, KfW. And our former guest Creditshelf partners with Goldman Sachs and pockets 100 million euros. And Gitpod, a startup from Kiel, convinces founders of GitHub and Shopify to invest. That's all in today's episode, so let's talk startups. Before we do, turn into our internet radio station at www.startup.radio. So it's basically just startup.radio. You can find all options to subscribe to our newsletter, podcast, YouTube channel, or listen to our internet station at linktree/startup-radio. That is linktree.ee. I guess it's Estonia/startup-radio. linktree.ee/startup-radio. Moving on to the people who are supporting us, our enablers, and that's your part.
Exactly. Again, Invest in Hessen. This show was made possible by Hessen Trade and Invest with the brand Invest in Hessen. You can learn more about them here, invest-in-hessen.com. We also run a dedicated sub-podcast with all interview in cooperation with them. You can find it on our link tree. Startupraven.com is the easiest and most efficient way to find new cooperation partners or get in touch with VCs. You can sign up for early access there. Chris, may we do some top news? As Chris already hinted, FTX may soon be history, but a German blog called Finance Forward reports there are several parties interested in buying the German entity of FTX, which is headquartered in Switzerland. Their information, meaning Finance Forward, has been spot on in other cases in the past. The second round of job cuts keeps coming. This time we have Homeday and McMakler, both prop techs. They entered the second round of job cuts. Homeday cuts 20 jobs, 60 they've done before, and McMakler again 100 employees. Gorillas may sell itself at the huge discount. Sequoia-backed grocery startup Getir is close to buying its troubled rival Gorillas in a heavily discounted deal set to be worth less than $1 billion US. Actually, Gorillas has been valued in the Series C investment at $2.1 billion US in early 2021, and to date they have raised more than $1.3 billion US. Also related to this news, Deutsche Startups uncovered that Gorillas paid 300 million euros earlier this year for French competitor Frisch Tea. How would you pronounce it, Chris?
If it's French, Frisch Tea.
Sorry for sorry to our audience in France. I know there are a few hundred people listening to us every week, but really sorry for butchering your language. Chris, you're Mr. Good News and you tell us good things about Airtaxis, right?
Yeah, so Lilium sold 100 Airtaxis to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia bought them from the Munich-based startup. The delivery is expected to take place in 2025. Before the deal, they also hired a former Airbus executive, Klaus Röwe. Fingers crossed for them. They did not generate revenue yet, but 841 million euros in losses so far. And related to that is also Volocopter news that we found, because Volocopter raised 182 million US dollars to bring their air taxis closer to certification as part of a Series E funding already. The company is currently testing their two-seater Volocity air taxi for the requirements set by the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, EASA. Volocopter is looking to certify its aircraft in the second half of 2023 and generate revenue with rides in 2024. But I guess with these things, we've seen it everywhere. Those timelines tend to get overrun. And now there's another siren in the back. Really annoying
we
one.
love your sound effects. Don't worry, Chris.
Shall pass. This too shall pass. And we already hinted at it. Creditshelf partners with Goldman Sachs. They were a former guest on our show, and they also hit profitability now. Goldman Sachs is providing the German alternative lender for small and medium enterprises with up to 100 million euros of secured funding. You can learn more in our interview with Creditshelf. The link is in the show notes. And it's is Germany only listed pure play fintech, offering a credit platform where investors can grant credit to German small and medium enterprises. That's it for the top news. You get to do the bragging round.
It's more a little bit of housekeeping, my friend. Our hosting service for the audio podcasts decided to sunset their hosting function. Since the last news publication, we've already received the news and changed hosters on the weekend, November 12th and 13th. That may have led to interruptions. We're very sorry for that. If you are hearing this episode, that means all worked out, all is fine, and you are listening via the new feed from the new hoster. A little bit about our publication schedule. By the way, in the link tree, there's also Google Calendar. If you're using Google Calendars, you can add it into your daily calendar. We'll have all the publications in there. Right now, we even have the ones for the whole year. Speaking about the whole year, our next news will be published December 22nd. And as every year, there will be a Fintech review published on December 25th. And we will be back in the year 2023 with the first new episode on January 19th. Chris, you got some ecosystem view here?
Yeah, a lot actually. And as I said, the ecosystem for startups and tech right now is in pretty tumultuous times, I would say. So not related to Germany specifically as a headline, but still of importance. The Wall Street Journal reports that investors pour into venture capital funds even as markets cool. That obviously can only be good for startups on the other side of the tunnel. Then Europe's venture capital scene is brighter than the US's, writes Axios. And if we look specifically at Germany, Switzerland, and Austria's ecosystems, there we see that the expectations in the German VC market are stabilizing according to the Q3 VC Business Climate Index of KfW Research. So we see that despite rate increases on the horizon, the current situation is even better than expected, and you can learn more in the show notes where we have the PDF photo. Germany's Secretary of Finance, Christian Lindner, agrees to review taxation of startup employee equity programs. So probably things might become a bit easier for the startups. And the German government as a whole stops the sale of Elmo's semiconductor manufacturing to China. Related to that, we saw a couple of debates in Germany and Chinese economic activity in Germany. There's a huge discussion going on whether a state-run company from China may buy shares in Hamburg Harbor. So that definitely seems to become one of the bigger stories for years to come, how to deal with the economic.
But we have to tell our audience, in the Hamburg case, they agreed to sell 25%, so they cannot block any decision to the China-based company. Here, that was an outright sale, and that's something they blocked.
Yeah, true. In news from Austria, we see that Austrian VC investments grew in the first half of 2022, despite the environment by more than 100%, but admittedly from a bit of a smaller base. Moving on to specific cities and the hubs where startup activity takes place in Germany.
Yes, here we want to highlight some hidden gems and cities of general startup interest. This is a very special hubs section because first, also Sifted now understands the startup activity outside of Berlin and Munich is important with the article, the fastest growing German startups outside of Berlin and Munich, plus Munich will lose its spot, at least here in the news. Munich now shows so much startup activity that we decided to drop their highlights here in hubs and will include them in their respective news section. We have some news of Frankfurt and Fulda. Fulda being a small city not too far away from Frankfurt. Keep in mind for Frankfurt the news from Creditshelf. Promenio, a Fulda Germany-based technology company creating hardware-enabled software, raises 33.5 million euros in growth funding. Siegen, Germany-based quantum computer maker Elektron, raises more than 50 million euros in funding. Chris, you got some other news there?
Yeah, in the city of Düsseldorf, we find Retraced, a German-based green startup that makes supply chains more transparent. They raised 6.5 million euros in venture capital, and in a round that is led by German billionaire Carsten Maschmeyer's Alstin Capital, also a figure that was part of the German Höhle der Löwen, so Shark Tank. And known for years in Germany also as an active member of the tabloids.
Because he's dating a famous actress in Germany.
Exactly. And we see that Move files for insolvency. The startup wanted to score with fully electric vans. However, the application is not expected to be the end of the company, which was founded in 2018. So things might just might cocoon and come out at the other end in a new way. In Kiel, in Germany's north, we see that the startup Gitpod makes coding easier. This convinced founders of GitHub and Shopify to invest with other investors 25 million euros in them. So congratulations to that area of Germany where there's usually not that much of startup activity going on. At the other end of the country, in Freiburg, very much in the south, we see that satellite startup Constellar, so like Stellar, but without the A, Constellar, wins 10 million in US dollars backing to build out its water monitoring platform and in seed funding. In Switzerland, we see Anokion, a Lausanne, Switzerland-based clinical stage biotech company, raising $35 million in equity funding. Decentric, with a Q in the end, an enterprise service as a software as a service platform, providing secure and compliant data clean rooms, closed a $5 million venture debt funding from Silicon Valley Bank UK. JUA, J-U-A, a Zurich-based artificial intelligence climate startup, raised $2.5 million in pre-seed funding and get some time to develop their offerings. Swiss digital health startup Akina raised 1.6 million Swiss francs in pre-seed funding. And the health coach startup Kinastic bought competitor Viabz, V-I-A-B-Z, which offers corporate health promotion. And moving on to Austria, Switzerland's neighbors to the east, Bitpanda ordered a special precautionary audit by KPMG after the collapse of FTX there. The Vienna-based security startup TapKey offers to unlock doors with their software and a smartphone instead of a key. They now sell the majority stake in the company to France-based DOM Security. And Alfred Gusenbauer, a former chancellor of Austria, now joined glove producer Elephant Skin as an investor for a round valuing the company at 25 million euros. As an investor, not an inventor. Gloves were already invented. Anyway, new VC funds. We are moving on to the general news, tech news, companies news section. If you're looking for money, you probably might want to look at Redstone and Enjoy Venture, who raised with the Human Impact Capital Fund Germany's first early stage social impact fund of 50 million euros. Privilege Ventures launches a 20 million Swiss franc fund for female-led startups, and Prediction Capital just closed the first tranche of its $30 million fund to back early-stage fintech and consumer startups in the DACH region. As you know, DACH is the German equivalent to GSA because DACH refers to Deutschland, Austria, and Switzerland.
Fintech News actually took the Fintech News from here because I didn't want to butcher the name of the Swiss-based VC fund. We shared the news. Right, we're here in the Fintech News general news section. We shared the news that Bankhaus von der Heid, a small bank based in Munich, is looking for a new buyer. Now, German Bitcoin Group seems to be looking at a potential acquisition. Coinbase hires fintech executive Daniel Seifert, formerly with Solaris Bank, to lead European expansion. Berlin-based fintech Solaris Bank announces its CEO, Roland Volz, will leave after 6 years, end of April 2023. The new CEO is a former Barclays Germany executive who has been with Aux Money and Commerzbank. Carsten Hültgemeier. I know, sorry, complicated name. TaxFix is a Berlin-based app for simplified personal tax filings. They became a unicorn in the spring of 2022. Now they had to publish their 2021 numbers, and they revealed they missed their own 2021 revenue target by almost 40%. And again, Germany-based Coinbase is having issues with BaFin. BaFin thinks they're not adhering to current regulations. Going a little bit more general news here. Berlin-based RV, recreational vehicle portal Paul Camper, enables owners to rent out their RVs. Now they are sold for 31 million euros to Australian listed Camplify. VW offloads German car sharing business for EV sales boost. US-based Wintrust closes Berlin-based startup Planetly only 1 year after their acquisition. All 200 employees are let go. And Enerkite, a German startup that uses kites to generate wind energy in higher altitudes than windmills. One kite can generate double the energy of a windmill. Now they leave the test stage and get into serial production. Chris, you're Mr. Good News. Do you have some good news here for me?
Yeah, I was still looking for an RV to rent.
Did you find something?
Yes. Actually, in my region, a couple of RVs actually show up. There's also a couple of sprinters, but they're also really expensive. Good Lord. 100 euros per night. For 100 euros per night, I want all-inclusive and a cocktail with a little umbrella in my hand. And not
For 100 euros a night,
RV.
you can get a decent hotel room.
Exactly. There you go. Very few and selected fundraisings that we found out about or read about. Juicer, JUCR, raised 31.2 million euros seed funding to build a pan-European charging infrastructure for e-mobility. The software-defined automation fuels growth through $10 million seed round led by Insight Partners. Berlin-based Affairs, APHERIS, raises 8.7 million euros to create a positive impact through better data collaboration. And carbon intelligence platform Klimatik, TIQ in the end, raises 6 million euros to fuel a net zero future for us all. Vara, with a V in the beginning, scores 4.5 million euros to make AI breast cancer screening accessible to everyone. And Green's tech startup Heedle, I don't know, is it Swabian, is it English? Heedle, raised 3 million euros in seed funding to replace electric water boilers with a sustainable alternative. And that is it with a very short selection of fundraisings, only 3 million plus. Apologies if you were not mentioned. But that is also what we have to say for November. We will be back December 22nd with our December and year-end wrap-up. All we have to say now is for those adhering to the festivities, enjoy your turkey or enjoy the tofurkey in my case, which is a very dry and not that recommendable alternative. And you can quote me on that.
At least you're admitting it. Thanks, Chris. It was a pleasure as always. See you in December. Bye-bye.
Tschüss.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, sharing is caring.